Majority Report with Sam Cedar, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
It is Friday, October 19th, 2018. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Cliff Schecter.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Cliff Schecter will be here with us, folks. Starting early today, end of a long week. Got to get on a jet plane, go to California. Meanwhile, this sounds amazing, but conservatives are now mounting a smear campaign against Jamal Khashoggi, presumably to justify why he was murdered and chopped up into pieces as a way of defending Donald Trump. Welcome to America, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, last night, Donald Trump promotes more violence against journalists. Absentee voting already underway across the country, including in Georgia, where Stacey Abrams is neck and neck with voters who are presumed to not be disenfranchised. So important to get out and vote, folks, because you know there will be other people's whose votes are not going to be counted, probably because they're black. Meanwhile, Rick Scott may have a Me Too problem as well as his Me Corrupt problem he already had. And the U.S. to eliminate the Palestinian mission and merge it with the Israeli embassy. And lastly, an ex-Trump advisor is suing Chapo Trap House. All this and more on today's program. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday. My computer's not working that well, so forgive me if I'm a little bit disjointed. I've had a rather technically difficult past 24 hours, haven't I?
Yeah.
But hopefully this doesn't extend to the plane. All right.
Ah, jeez.
That's me knocking on wood.
Right, knocking on wood. We'll be fine. Everybody will be fine, ladies and gentlemen. It is November 19th, and back of the envelope type, well, I'll count them out because we have less than 2 weeks away? No, we got about 2.5 weeks. It's going to be November 7th is Election Day, and all hell is going to break loose after this election. I'm telling you this now. That could involve firings of DOJ officials. That could involve potential attacks on other countries. But this lame duck session is going to be nuts, I think. This is my sense.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Well, it's going to be a lame duck session. The question is, who's going to return on January 21st or January 20th, whenever the Congress is inaugurated? But there's no doubt in my mind, Democrats win, Republicans win, we're going to see some firings. And the question is and we may see some attempts to engage in a war. Maybe it'll be worse if the Democrats win in the short term till they get into office in terms of the way that Trump reacts. It's unclear. But I can tell you that in terms of long term, if Democrats are not controlling the House, look to cuts in Social Security, look to cuts in Medicare, look to cuts across the board. Think about the sequester without the military cuts. And it will not be like the first 2 years of this administration, because there will have been a validation of Trump and the Republicans. And you're starting to see this now, right? The Never Trump movement is basically dead. There's a couple of stragglers who have decided they're really not Never Trump anymore. They're just going to call themselves Democrats. And all well and good. It's nice to have 4 more votes nationally. But the Never Trump movement is dead. There is no hesitation anymore about Republican leadership signing on to a Trump agenda, signing on to a Trump methodology. And we're going to play this in a little bit when Cliff is here, but make no mistake about it. Donald Trump has showed them, like, this is the way you can win. And I don't know if they're right or they're wrong, but they don't have many options. That's the problem. There is no other options for them. So Trumpism, and I don't mean that in terms of policy. In terms of policy, it's the same. But
fascism is politics aestheticized, right?
Right. And the politics, like the actual policy prescriptions, are more or less the same, but the methodology is a little bit different, and the style is a little bit different.
Kavanaugh really clarified things regards to the Never Trumpers.
Yes, and it did 2 things. It did that in terms of saying where everybody's aligned, but it also was the first time where we had, in the post-Trump era, the adoption of the Trump methodology, which is basically total shamelessness. Not mostly shamelessness, where I think Republicans had been for a long time, but total shamelessness. The idea that Kavanaugh could sit in that room and say the alumnus thing was an homage, and every single human being in that room knew exactly what it was and that he was lying. Every single one. And some, they were just like, well, he's going to get away with this. And the others were just like, I can't believe he's going to get away with this. But no one said a word. And there were other lies, but that to me was just the most sort of like unequivocal.
I thought the way he lied about the process, like, I've been investigated X number of times prior to this.
There's a half a dozen other lies, and at least, and, like, outright lies, like the Manny Miranda stuff and stuff like this. But that was the most sort of obvious, like, colloquial. There was no hedging in the language. It was not like you needed some type of special information. You didn't need to know the backstory. It literally would have been like if he got up there and said, 12 noon is the nighttime. You don't need to know anything. You know the guy's lying. He knows he's lying. His crying wife behind him knows he's lying. Every senator knew he was lying. Every person in the room knew he was lying, and nobody did anything. And that is, to me, sort of aside from, knowing where the Republicans stand, that moment was when I think a lot of people in the Republican Party were like, ooh, the even the notion of like shame is no longer a political constraint. And that is super dangerous. I don't know that it makes, I don't know that it wasn't inevitable and that we certainly were on the road, but it just basically means that, like, you know, power must be taken at any point. And if he wins here, if the Republicans win here, and the lying that they're doing is just, you know, also shameless. We will talk about that. But, you know, we saw a glimpse of this in the past. Well, we'll save this for Cliff Schecter. But with that in mind, we have the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. He's at the White House. Ostensibly, he's flown back from Saudi Arabia, right, when he's making this speech. And he went to Saudi Arabia. He's like, I need the hard answers here. I need to know what the heck. There's reports that your own personal bodyguard, Mohammed bin Salman, was there.
You did his Clouseau impression.
And Pompeo got the goods. Here he is. He's coming back to announce, like, I figured out what was going on.
I had a chance to brief the president on the travels that I returned from last evening, where I had traveled both to Riyadh and Ankara. I had a chance to talk with in Riyadh with the king, with the crown prince, with the foreign minister, all of the United States counterparts there. We made clear to them that we take this matter with respect to Mr. Khashoggi very seriously. They made clear to me that they too understand the serious nature of the disappearance of Mr. Khashoggi. They also assured me that they will conduct a complete...
Pause it. The disappearance. Right? He disappeared.
Gotta love that passive voice.
Well, it's also sort of like, we don't know what happened to him. We don't know if he's dead or alive. He for all we know, this could be an insurance fraud scam. The old life insurance thing. Or maybe he just really didn't want to get married.
Spontaneous combustion.
Spontaneous combustion's possible. Maybe he didn't want to get married, and so this is the only way that he didn't have the guts to break up with his fiancée, so he did the old go into the embassy and go out the back door type of thing. Maybe he was picked up by a UFO. Stranger things have happened, you know, or maybe not, but you know, at one point, it's possible someone gets teleported up to a UFO. Or picked up by a tractor beam. There's multiple different explanations, but he disappeared. Go back a little bit.
Understand the serious nature of the disappearance of Mr. Khashoggi. They also assured me that they will conduct a complete, thorough investigation of all of the facts surrounding Mr. Khashoggi, and that they will do so in a timely fashion. And that this report itself will be transparent for everyone to see, to ask questions about, and to inquire with respect to its thoroughness. And I told President Trump this morning that we ought to give them a few more days to complete that, so that we too have a complete understanding of the facts surrounding that, at which point we can make decisions about how or if the United States should respond.
You see what you're doing in real time. We are watching people make up a story, right? Like, and apparently it's not going to be too easy because there's so much evidence that it appears to be like physical evidence in the form of like a recording that they're really having to work on, like what's going on. So like they have to do some type of investigation. Now, incidentally, one person who was reportedly of that 15, my understanding from last night, already had the misfortune of dying in a car crash. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? So they may need a couple more days to investigate. In other words, like maybe let's see, if you got one in one day, maybe they need 2 weeks.
You have some
But they're going to kill all of those guys.
Well, I'd like to call it tying up loose ends.
Right. And the U.S. government is covering for them. So that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I hope we see more of this. This is why all the Republicans who are running, I think that's, you know, we were sitting in here. Why are the Republicans, like the conservatives are doing a whisper campaign smearing Khashoggi, which is, I just don't even understand what the outcome of that is. They don't want to alienate, I guess, their base. But the fact is that none of these Republicans, I mean, I don't know how going into this election, a single one of them running for re-election could actually say like anything other than this horror. Like every Democratic at this point, we have a government where, you know, and it's slightly different than when we just kill people, right? Because everybody sort of bought into that as a nation. But the idea that we are running basically interference for the just naked murder of a journalist. That's pretty crazy.
The base loves that stuff, though.
Well, yeah, they're going to need a little bit more than the base. That's the problem. So they may like it from Trump, but if I'm running against Dave Brat in Virginia, let's say, I'm going to be like, will you denounce the president for covering up on this murder by the Saudis? The Saudis aren't necessarily, it'd be interesting. We'll talk to Cliff about this because I think there is a reason why Donald Trump was praising Gianforte, the other a journalist abuser. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, Cliff Schecter. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Casual Friday. And of course, in this era, nothing's casual about Fridays anymore because it's usually just a huge news dump or something else going on. Nevertheless, I am wearing a soft-collared shirt and I have queued up this little ditty.
Cliff Schecter, Libertas LLC. New media, public relations, and strategy. You want any of these services, you know who you gotta see. Cliff Schecter, Libertas LLC.com.
Oh, I've missed that theme song. The back in the days when Jimmy Reefer Cake was a little bit more, I don't know, ballady with Mrs. Reefer Cake. Cliff Schecter, how are you? Cliff.
Yes, I'm hearing a little. What? Nope. Now it sounds good. I was hearing myself for a second.
That's all right.
You don't want to do that.
Everybody's having a little technical difficulties around here today. Everybody's having a little technical problems. Cliff, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, man?
Well, as well as one can be expected, I'm not going to lie. I'm starting to feel a little bit of like energy / anxiety about the midterms. I think this is.
Are you one of those that likes democracy? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm a fan of democracy, but I'm also I think. My feeling is less about the fear for democracy and the more the fear for just the Republican rule, frankly,
right.
in this country. And because I think the days of Republicans hesitating and being unsure about Donald Trump, they've always shared the same policy prescriptions, but now I think they have basically worked out their differences and will.
Yeah, but I think you're undercounting the impact of all the sad faces that Ben Sass and Jeff Flake make.
Yes, that's true. But they're going to be gone, right? Well, Ben Sass will still be around.
He'll still be there to make sad faces and then go into unprecedented judicial hearings during what should be the break, so that he can then keep going and destroying norms while being very sad about all the division. And, I find that really helps.
Maybe
it's just me.
I would like to touch on that in a few for folks who don't know.
Sure.
Despite the fact that Chuck Schumer made 2 separate deals to fast track 15 Republican judges each time, total of 30 lifetime appointments. Apparently, he didn't talk to Chuck Grassley about it, and Chuck Grassley is now holding hearings for more judges. With 3 or 4 people are showing up. I mean, it's.
Is there anybody in the entire sort of left of, let's say, the Republican Party anywhere in there that thinks Chuck Schumer is doing a good job? I'm kind of wondering.
It's stunning to me. I
know we plan to talk about other stuff, but yeah, I do think we should touch on that because the deals, the not sort of making them. I mean, I'm not a Senate expert. You've probably had people on the show who are. But I do understand from my friends who've worked on the Senate floor that if they do not provide unanimous consent, they can drag their 30 hours of debate on each of these folks, which essentially they could have just sent. I mean, Tim Kaine is not what you'd call in a real race. He's running in a state that's leaning left against a neo-Confederate. And Virginia, that would have been a problem 30 years ago, no longer. And then otherwise, you've got, Maryland is right there. We happen to have some senators from there. Same with Mark Warner from Virginia. They could have just had somebody on the floor like they need to do.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm sure McConnell wouldn't do that to us. He would never, just to be a dick, and that's what's so frustrating. It's like after Kavanaugh, you're going to make deals. I would just do it. Even if you can't stop them, I would do it just to fucking ruin their vacation and make them work harder.
Yeah,
no,
I agree with you. We talked about it yesterday too with Jeff Hauser, and I don't know, that's driving me crazy. But all right, let's talk about this though, because reports today by the Washington Post that conservatives, and you know how this goes, right? They're the line between what constitutes the lowest rung of the conservative taxonomy, is basically now functionally equivalent with your typical Republican senator. There is no, there was a day where it was like, oh, these people, the Breitbarts and the low end folks, they're kept at arm's length. Mike Cernovich isn't going to be dining at the White House, but those days are over.
Right.
And
Breitbart, they're all Breitbart now. Yeah.
The conservatives are trying to mount a whisper campaign saying that Jamal Khashoggi was Muslim Brotherhood and that's why he should be chopped up when he goes in to get a marriage license.
Yeah.
And so here is, with that as the backdrop, right? And we just played a clip of Mike Pompeo coming back and saying we're going to give them a couple more days to get their story straight and figure out how they're going to make up something.
We need to catch the real killers. Yeah,
exactly. If the glove doesn't fit, but this was interesting. Donald Trump last night, he's in where was he in Virginia? Was it Missoula, Montana? Sorry, and he's at his rally, and he's added a line. Now, granted, Gianforte is from that area, yes.
Yeah, he's a Montana guy,
right? But how he talked about Gianforte, he had a choice, and here's where he went for. Here's what he went for.
He's so smart. You know, we've had people, you're on live television all over the place, and we've had people get up, speak for 20, 25 minutes. And these guys are going crazy. That's not the deal. But Greg is smart. And by the way, never wrestle him. You understand that? Never. Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind. He's my guy. I shouldn't say this because there's nothing to be embarrassed about. So I was in Rome with a lot of the leaders from other countries talking about all sorts of things, and I heard about it.
Yeah, he heard about. And now he's referring to when Gianforte criminally body slammed a reporter. He was indicted, right? Charged and convicted.
Yes, he was.
And
you know what I love about that, though? Well, you finish first, and I'll tell you what I love even more about that. Go ahead.
Nothing to be embarrassed about. But I have a theory about why Trump highlighted that. You go first.
Well, I'm not giving a theory about why you highlighted it. I'm just saying I love how, in possibly the most unintended metaphor of all time, it was like, when I was in Rome, right? Like the perfect metaphor for the falling of our empire.
Right.
Is sort of, like when he was in Rome, one of the other places that allowed a once functioning, at least on some level, democracy to become so thoroughly corrupt, allowed the people like Gianforte and others to cross the line, the Rubicon, if you will, and to come inside and behave that way, and of course, which led to Rome turning to dust. And that's how he of course he's too much of a moron to have any understanding of anything. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to say your theory is that part of this is to kind of ease the burden of what happened, what's going on with Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
To defend kind of his attacks on the press, because so many Republicans, of course, have asked, and pushed back your Ben Sasses and others that never do anything, so it doesn't much matter. But at least they've sort of critically said, oh, well, Susan Collins tweeted out, and of course we all know Susan Collins is going to follow up on this until that first phone call from McConnell or W, and that we need those to back off this one, and she will. But how terrible and horrible it is with Khashoggi, we have to get to the bottom of it, and we have to, whoever it is must pay for it. But we all know in the end that they're not going to do anything. So once those voices, we've seen this movie a million times before, those voices will grow quiet, the news cycle will move on, and Trump will do what he's doing right now, which is to find ways to kind of to loosen the reins and justify the media had it coming. They deserved it. And this is part of that with Gianforte. That would be sort of my theory, but go for yours. I want to hear yours.
I agree. I think that is exactly it. I mean, I think that, it is, again, to muddy the waters around this particular topic that, to sort of take the baseline of what kind of violence is appropriate against a reporter. I mean, I can't believe what I'm saying those words, but that, just creating this dynamic of like, look, government officials, reporters, there's always like this tension that gets resolved in some type of physical thing. And, the Saudis are a little bit more they're a little bit more intense than we are. That's all that's going on here. And I think it is to mitigate, the impact, the potential impact that this could have on the midterms. I think we're probably a couple of days away from seeing this become a campaign issue where, just
a rallying cry. Well,
a little bit.
Kavanaugh did, right? And all sorts of things that we believed a couple of years ago. And I would say when I think you, me, others who were already very cynical about who the Republican Party was, or how they've just pushed past the boundary on everything. Child molestation, treason, sexual assault. I mean, name the issue. Obviously, not paying your taxes for 30 years, although that might have always been a positive in the Republican Party. But so yeah, why wouldn't this become a he said she said issue? Why wouldn't they make this about if you're with our team? Because everything, again, this is what fascism is. You're with the team, and if you're with the team can do no wrong. You know what I mean? Reality is what the team says it is. So I don't see where, clearly already Trump has set the tone of, they're out there looking for the real killers. It may not have been them. all the evidence we have from an audio recording to what the Turks are saying, not that the Turks are the most trustworthy right now, but in general, what a variety of evidence is telling us, a witness apparently who heard things going on and the rest, is all wrong. Just the way all the people corroborating what Dr. Ford was saying, the general behavior of Brett Kavanaugh, things that she told them afterwards, everything didn't really happen. It was just he said, she said. And there's no doubt that's where they're headed with this. And you mentioned your Cernoviches and your Prosobiec, or how you pronounce his stupid fucking name, and Breitbart and all of those guys. They're, Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity, the rest of the whalers. They're going to all get on board with it. And he had it coming, even Muslim Brotherhood and, that kind of thing. I have no doubt.
All right, let's turn to another element of the campaign that's going on across the country, and it's fascinating. On some level, I guess it's to be expected, but on another level, it's not necessarily what I would have guessed a year ago, right? We have almost to a person. I'm sure there's some races where we don't see this, but you have Democrats running on health care, largely either against the attacks on the ACA. And there is an active attack on the ACA right now. 20 Republican states suing in federal court to get rid of
multiple attorneys general who are running for higher office. Hawley is running against Claire McCaskill in Missouri. Mike DeWine here, where I am in Ohio, running for governor. Just think it's worth pointing out. Some people know.
Yeah.
Schwett, the one in Michigan, running for governor. Just so you know who people are who are claiming, Scott Walker in Wisconsin running for re-election. They all claim that they pre-existing condition protection should be kept, and of course, every single one of them either supported with what they've said or is actually officially on a lawsuit that is going after making that to be something that's not required anymore.
And, okay, so watch this. Ari Melber last night had a compilation of Republicans. This is a pretty good example of what we're talking about. Here, play this clip.
Everyone knows Republicans have spent years railing against Obamacare. They've tried to repeal it dozens of times in the House. The politics, though, are changing. This is a story you may have missed. But look, with the midterms approaching right now, Republican candidates in the Trump era changing their tune.
I voted to protect people with pre-existing conditions. We cannot go back to where we were before Obamacare, where people were one diagnosis away from going bankrupt.
We can protect pre-existing conditions, and you need to understand, everyone agrees we're going to protect pre-existing conditions.
Individuals with pre-existing conditions should not be denied health insurance coverage.
I'm taking on both parties and fighting for those with pre-existing conditions.
That's Dana Rohrabacher. Now, every single one of those people in that video voted.
I can't see this, but I can hear that slimy Ted Cruz from a mile away.
Indeed.
Many miles away.
Every single one of those individuals in that ad voted to cut Obamacare and get rid of pre-existing conditions protections. Every single one of them. And across the board. I mean, this has been the rallying cry for Republicans for 10 years. And this is, this is one of the things that I think people anticipated with the Affordable Care Act, is that once you get, you give people something that's a little bit better or significantly better than they had before, it just becomes like an expectation. And then the next step goes from there. But that's pretty impressive. And we have now Donald Trump tweeted out today, or I guess this was yesterday, because this is becoming a huge liability for the Republicans. And he tweeted out, all Republicans support people with pre-existing conditions. I don't know if they do. If they don't, they will after I speak to them. I am in total support. I don't even think he understands it. Also, Democrats will destroy your Medicare, and I will keep it healthy and well. Now,
I think what he meant to say is he supports pre-existing conditions. He's in favor of cancer. He likes any pre-existing condition you could get, he's in favor of.
I just think that I like people with pre-existing conditions. That's what I'm saying.
He supports them morally.
It's like the poorly educated.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, look at my African-American over there. He's great. He doesn't know what he's saying. The ones that aren't as dumb as him, they know what they're doing. Look, there's 130 million Americans who have pre-existing conditions. Pre-existing conditions include terrible things like cancer, and include much more sort of not great things, but things that affect many, many more people, like acne and anxiety, depression. Also, if you're a woman and you've been pregnant, that's a pre-existing condition. And there's a whole long list of these things, right? And I'm working on an independent expenditure project here in Southwest Ohio against the Congressman Steve Chabot. So he's done the same thing, lied and said, he voted 56 times, which is how many times they voted overall. So many House members are sitting there right alongside Chabot in districts across the country. I'm sure Rohrbacher, who you played there, is probably one of them. The vast majority of them, there's very few of them, maybe a half dozen or less, who voted against junking Obamacare, and even those guys voted for it some of the times and against it other times. And to be very clear, if you voted for getting rid of Obamacare, that is the only thing that provided this protection that said people with pre-existing conditions would be treated like everybody else when it comes to health insurance. They wouldn't be charged anymore. So what you have is, you've got that. They're flat out lying. Then you've got on top of that a lawsuit initiated by Donald Trump, who of course sent that tweet out by his Justice Department, that is going after in court because of what the Supreme Court did a couple of years ago with Obamacare, and saying that in undermining it, and because of what the Senate did and the House did, Congress, in getting rid of the individual mandate. Now they're saying, well, there's no individual mandate. You can't require pre-existing conditions because that's too much of a burden on businesses. So essentially, he's leading a lawsuit to take away your protection if you have a pre-existing condition. And again, think of whatever state you're in the population. I'm in Ohio. I know it here. It's 4.8 million people of a population of about 12 million. Tends to run between a third and 40% of the population has something that falls in that list. So if it's not you, it's somebody you're friends with or you love. And they've realized this is backfired because they spent years going after Obamacare. So they are lying like banshees now. They've got it on TV ads. They've got it in direct mail. They're saying it everywhere that, of course, they always were all in favor of protecting this. And for anybody listening who's going to go out and vote, they're all lying.
It's amazing. And here's what's also extremely irritating to me about that. Well, I mean, obviously, that is naked. And hopefully Democrats across the country are taking advantage of that, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to say, you're part of a lawsuit that is attacking the ACA's pre-existing conditions provision, or you voted against the ACA's pre-existing conditions. And
without an alternative, you voted to get rid of Obamacare, and there was no alternative plan.
Absolutely.
So you can say that maybe in your heart you care, which I don't believe either, but say that. But there was nothing you were going to vote for that would make up for that to provide that protection for all of these people. Right?
Look,
that's it.
And here is, I hate to, because we brought up Chuck Schumer earlier. I just want to show you how you could drop the ball on this. All right. Here's Matt House. It's a tweet from Chuck Schumer's spokesperson. He's responding to Trump's tweet, and he writes, did he drop his lawsuit to eliminate protections for those with pre-existing conditions and just not tell anybody? Like, this is super nitpicky of me, but it's indicative of that office just seems to not be able to do politics, because you don't imply that Donald Trump did the right thing and just didn't tell anybody. You say that Donald Trump is lying because he's actually attacking these people. I mean, this is so nitpicky.
And maybe you tour the country and you put stuff all over TV and radio, and I know remember, a bunch of Republicans are retiring, so they will never be held accountable for this vote. But there's about 30, if you know Topher Spiro or follow him on Twitter, he sent out a list that was in Mother Jones. And there's 32 Republicans on this list. I'll retweet it. I did it already a little bit. Maybe I'll share it with you if you want to share it with people on your page, Sam, so people can know and look and see, there's a list here. They're on it. They're all lying. And even the ones who call themselves, moderates, your Carlos Curbelo from Florida, who tries to pretend he's a moderate, Elise Stefanik from New York, upstate, who tries to pretend she's a moderate, and some of these other ones are at least moderate-ish. They're not. They all voted to get rid of this multiple times. They're all liars. And the other thing, and I'll say this just as somebody who's worked a lot of this issue, so I know pretty well that people should be careful of and be ready for, is what they're doing now is they've created some other just piece of garbage bill, right, where they're pretending so they can come out and they've got a fig leaf to hide behind it. Oh, look, I'm for that. That would require that people with pre-existing conditions be covered. And that legislation, which didn't exist before, by the way, all the other times they've voted against Obamacare, is now out there. At least Republicans have put it together. But here's the thing that you need to know about that, is that it says you can't get rid of people, kick them off insurance for having a pre-existing condition. However, it says you can discriminate against them and treat them differently and charge them whatever you want.
Right.
So it's kind of like I could say to you, hey, look at that Lamborghini over there. I won't ban you from buying it. You just need to come up with the $300,000 or $400,000 to afford it.
Right. I mean, that's basically how it worked before. Right. I mean, that's more or less how it worked before. We're just going to price you out of this so that it's completely impossible for you to pay for it. And they tried this.
Have you had Laura Packard on your show at all, Sam?
No, I don't think so.
You know who Laura is? She's been at Netroots Nation in the past. She's a progressive. I'll bring up quickly. She's a progressive activist, has been for years. And a year ago, went into the doctor. She's made this very public, and she's done a tour around the country. Worked with healthcare voter, and had a sort of cough that wouldn't go away, and was came out with a diagnosis of stage 4 cancer.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and she's been effectively, thank God, fighting it. But as she's pointed out to people, she's been touring the country, because she's still doing that even while she's sick and while she's fighting this, that it cost $4 million to keep her alive last year. So basically what the company could say, hey, we're not going to ban you from having insurance if you've got pre-existing conditions. Well, that's illegal because all these Republicans signed on to that. We're just going to charge you, half of that $4 million. Good luck. I mean, that's what they're talking about here. So it doesn't matter if they say that you have to be allowed to have insurance. You don't have to be treated like everybody else and priced in like everybody else. They can charge you whatever they feel like. So it's very important to know that.
I'm curious is what your sense is. The one of the things I've seen the Republicans push back on too is this notion of Medicare for all. Paul Ryan has gone out there, tried to talk about it. What's his face? Azera, is that it, from Health and Human Services? Azan.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, just give me a sense of how that's playing. Like, are you seeing any of that in Ohio?
Yeah, absolutely. That same congressman I talked about, Shabbat, in his debate the other night, was trying to pull that up. And the guy in DeWine, who I mentioned running for governor here, what they're trying to say is this is their line also. And that's the line that Trump kind of fudged, because he always gets his talking points at least half wrong because he's such a fucking moron. So he's like, oh, and they'll destroy your Medicare. Like he could remember Medicare and destroy, but he couldn't remember to say Medicare for all will destroy Medicare, which is what their talking point is.
Right.
Because they know that Medicare is one of the most popular programs, if not the most popular in the country. It's kind of up there with Social Security. It's incredibly successful. Its administrative costs and all of that are so far below the overhead of private insurance companies. It's one of the most successful and cost-efficient medical programs in the world. And so and people love it. So the only way they can turn people against it is by trying to scare old people and say, well, by giving it to other people, it's going to cost more and it's going to be destroyed, which, of course, is anybody who understands healthcare economics, which is not an easy thing to understand, but has looked into this, knows that they're lying. Because the truth of the matter is that everything gets better. The more people you add into Medicare who are younger and healthier, so a 50-something is likely to be healthier than a 60-something. And a 40-something is likely to be healthier than a 50-something. So you bring in younger people, it actually is more likely to, for extra costs, Medicare Plus and some of the other things you get, it's actually likely to bring the cost down.
Right, because you've expanded the risk pool.
Benefit of,
right.
Right, it has the dual benefit of then you're also doing the opposite and taking the oldest people out of private insurance. So that becomes cheaper too. It's one of these win-wins where everything works. So they're just making stuff up, right? I mean, it's just all lies. But that's, that's what they do.
It's interesting because I don't know if you remember when Paul Ryan had his plan for Medicare, which was basically to voucherize the whole thing, right? And there was this big argument. People were like, well, if you privatize Medicare, it's almost definitionally not Medicare. But he was like, no, we're calling it Medicare. And I remember the press. I mean, I don't know if people can fully appreciate this. The press at the time said, well, he is calling it Medicare. That was the line. And so
it must really be Medicare.
Right. And we were pushing back. I can't remember when this was. Maybe this was like sometime during maybe Obama, but maybe before then. And it's like, well, but if you privatize it, the sine qua non, like the thing that makes Medicare is that it's a government run health insurance program. And if you voucherize it, so it's just money to go to get private insurance, it's not Medicare.
Wait, if I call my roof Medicare, does that make my roof Medicare?
Well, the interesting thing is...
I'm just wondering how far we extend this analogy of, well, they're calling it Medicare.
But
like, do we call anything Medicare, and that makes it Medicare?
And it was beaten back because people were like, it is not Medicare as we know it. And I've noticed the Republicans are using that same line. Now, it's a lot less effective because basically, the reality of the policy is, Medicare exactly as it is, but just more of it. And maybe on some level they should have branded it Medicare More, something like this. But
in the end, they're out there, and you may have talked on your show already. I wouldn't be surprised if what McConnell said just last week, which is, you see the 17% increase in the deficit, which is of course caused by our tax cut. He didn't say that, but a ridiculous tax cut weighted to corporations and all sorts of loopholes for pharmaceutical companies because they're not making enough money, and the top 1%, which 83% of the benefits went to. Oh yeah, by the way, we're going to need to cut that deficit. So we're going to talk about entitlements, which means of course Medicare and Social Security. You allow these guys to stay in office. You allow them to continue to control the House and the Senate. That's what they're coming for, to get that. They need to get that money from somewhere. It never changes.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that, too. I want to ask you about that, too, because Mitch McConnell is out there saying that we're going to have to cut Social Security and Medicare, more or less. That's what he's saying, right? I don't know how explicit he's been, but we're going to have to look at entitlements. That's what that means. Meanwhile, you have people on the ground who are running for office who are saying, I'm going to protect your Medicare. What's going on with that? Like, Mitch McConnell must know that, at least in terms of messaging, he's crossing things up. What do you think the theory is behind there?
I think it's to keep donors happy. I think they're always trying to balance, Koch brothers and guys like that on the corporate wing that are giving them money, Ricketts and the rest of them that want Social Security and Medicare to be destroyed and know that if they're refusing to mention it and whatever, they probably wouldn't have the guts to do it. So in a way, I think he was sending a signal to them because there's nothing else I can think of that makes any sense. Again, Social Security and Medicare are incredibly popular. So it was when numerous Democrats, including Elizabeth Warren, leading the charge, and even as far to the right as Joe Manchin came out in favor of increasing Social Security. So these are not popular things to cut. And the fact that McConnell would come out and say something so tone deaf right before a midterm election makes no sense to me. So I'm using Occam's razor here because I can't figure out anything else, which is he said that because they're not having different Republicans up for election say that around the country, just the leader saying it to sort of reassure, the economic class, the plutocrats who want to get their money's worth.
Interesting.
That's my guess.
Interesting. All right. Well, Cliff, I think that's right. I mean, that sounds right to me. But it is interesting to see which way they will go with that. I don't know if they're actually I don't know. But it is.
I think they're hoping that if they say they demonize immigrants enough and run on these kinds of things enough, that comment out there by McConnell, he maybe won't even say it again. He said it once, reassured the people he needed to reassure. And then you move on. But be quite sure that that's what they're coming for. That's not scaremongering. They've said it many times in the past. They've tried it, as they did after George Bush won re-election in 2004. This has been on their list since the Heritage Foundation drew up a line of attack around 1979 when Reagan was coming into office. It's been it's been a plan ever since FDR passed it. But they want this. It's a pool of money that can provide further tax cuts and all the things that they live and die for. So.
Indeed. Cliff Schecter, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Take care, buddy.
Thanks. Bye. Cliff Schecter, everybody. There it is. There is the week. Do we have a song from Jimmy Reefer Cake?
No Jimmy Reefer Cake song today.
That's all right. Well, we got to go. We're going to be a little quick because we're going to take an airplane and go to California. We will do a fun half because that's the way we roll. Even when we got to get going, we're going to do a fun half. Folks, just a reminder, this program relies on your support for its very existence. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com. When you become a member, not only do you support the free show every day, we give you extra content every day. And you can get access our archives, whatever it is. So jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Also, for your listening pleasure this weekend, the Antifada. They answer your questions, right, Jamie?
Indeed, we do.
There you go. Questions answered. You have questions for Antifada. They answer. Check it out on YouTube and on patreon.com/theantifada.
And wherever free podcasts are sold.
And wherever free podcasts are sold for free. Oh, and we're going to talk about Jamie last night was hobnobbing last night with some major political figures. We'll talk about that in the fun half. Matt?
Literary Hangover, the Corey Robin episode on his Reactionary Mind book is available on YouTube, so check that out.
Check that out, folks. All right, going to take a quick break. Head into the fun half. 646-257-3920 is the number. 646-257-3920 is the number. I am firing up the phones right now. I don't know if I'm going to have IMs because I don't know if I can set that up, but we'll see. Be right
People can tell them to you over the phone.
There you go. We'll be right back. It's a nice feeling. It's real. It's a nice feeling. Sweetheart, get me a beer. I totally get it. They are. You turn on the TV, some iteration of me. Zero-sum game. It's a nice feeling. Zero-sum game. Zero-sum game. It's a nice feeling. You're going to lose your status. He's the king of his zero-sum game. I totally get it. Zero-sum game. They are. Zero-sum game. Sweetheart, get me a beer. Get me a beer. Who did that one?
I'll look up who it is. I don't have it listed here.
That's pretty good. It's just my zero-sum game, sweetheart, get me a beer thing.
That should be your walk-up music in Sunday's debate.
Oh, that should be. That would be pretty good. I can just see myself coming out like that. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm going to make a prediction about the debate. I am debating Charlie Kirk on Sunday. I believe it's at 4:30. Is that right?
Yes.
At Politicon. The debate topic will be, is Donald Trump good for the middle class? And here's my... well, I'm not going to predict what he's going to say because we're going to put out a video on this announcement, and I don't want him to know to know what I think he's going to say.
Right. He's probably hired an intern to monitor the show.
Well, they do have a team. They have a lot of stuff. Here's my big prediction. There are going to be over 20, probably under 70, people from Turning Points USA there. Paid people. They have an HR department. They have a human resources department at this grassroots organization that ostensibly is to, it's
very busy.
Dedicated to scrubbing your questionable tweets.
That's right. They scrub your questionable tweets.
They might need to get into the WhatsApp.
So I'm going to tell you, when you're watching this ultimately on video, and I don't think it's going to be live, but when you watch it ultimately on video, understand that the reason why there's going to be a lot of cheers every time Charlie says something, and not so much when I do, a lot of like, oh, there could be some groaning a little bit, because there are going to be a lot of paid operatives there, who are there to cheer on Charlie Kirk. That's his name.
If you are planning to attend, it will be at Liberty Hall at 4:30 at Politicon.
Liberty Hall.
What a better place.
What a better place. I wonder how big Liberty Hall is. I wonder how many people will come to this. A couple hundred? Like 1,000?
There's not too much competition.
We'll see.
You got the Deep State, Dynasty Typewriter, Scotty Nels Hughes versus Kyle Kalinske. That's pretty interesting.
Oh, is that happening at the same time?
Yeah. And Bomb Iran with Bill Kristol.
You got to be kidding me.
That is
I'm sorry to miss that.
Yeah.
Wait, so it's actually Bill Kristol doing a bomb. That's what it's called?
Right.
It's a musical performance.
He wrote a musical.
All right, so that is it. I mean, so people should keep their eyes open. I don't know if it's going to be live streamed, but probably not, but the video will come out at one point. Let's go to, this is funny. You remember Dave Brat? Dave Brat was the Tea Party guy who took out Cantor. I can't even remember his name. Eric Cantor. Eric Cantor was the whip. It was some people have compared essentially what AOC did to Crowley with what happened with Cantor and Brat in Virginia. And the difference is I think AOC is going to have some durability, right? And I don't think you're going to see 2 or 4 years from now a Republican beating her in a congressional election. Dave Brat, not quite as politically adept, it seems to me. Here is Dave Brat attempting let's first do, let's do that one first. Here's Dave Brat trying to reach out. Virginia, one of those states, and there's a lot of states, but Virginia is one of those states that's been hit hard by the opioid addiction problem. And here's Dave Brat trying to make it seem like he can empathize with this and understands that it's a problem and that a lot of these people probably, were just hit with a tsunami. And here he is trying to show that he's got empathy. We don't have video of this, right? It's just audio.
Just audio, yeah.
Okay, so Dave Brat talking to an inmate at Chesterfield County Jail. This is part of an addiction support group. And here he is, the inmate's describing some of the difficulties that he's faced.
My daughter, you think you're having a hard time. I got $5 million worth of negative ads coming at me. How you think I'm feeling? Right? Nothing's easy for anybody. You think I'm a congressman, life's easy. This guy's off having steaks. Bull on me. Right? I got a daughter. She's got to deal with that crap on the TV every day. Right? So it's tough. Anyone that thinks no one out there's got some easy life, right? And you got it harder. I'm not dismissing that, right? You got some fears, real anxiety, coming up with a job and whatever. And what you got to find is a support system.
There you go. There is Dave. Can we listen to that again? Because this is pretty amazing. This is a guy who is there to show that he cares about this. And he is saying, you think because I'm a congressman, I'm going out having a bunch of steaks, which I would be willing to bet anything that, yes, he is going out and having a bunch of steaks. But even put that aside, like the idea is like, my daughter's got to look at these attack ads and you got anxiety, like worried about getting a job and stuff like that. What?
You have trouble because you've been criminalized for addiction? Well, you should try being a public figure.
Yeah, exactly. It's as if poor Dave Brat, right? This is how Eric Cantor lost his primary. He was like so stuck in Washington. Here, let's play this again. This is Dave Brat talking to an inmate.
My daughter, you think you're having a hard time. I got $5 million worth of negative ads coming at me.
Pause it. Did you hear what he said? I missed this the first time.
He said you have a hard time.
No, he said, my daughter, you think you have a daughter. You have a hard time. Are you sure? Go back to the beginning.
My daughter, you think you're having a hard time. I got $5 million worth of negative ads coming at me. How you think I'm feeling? Right? Nothing's easy for anybody. You think I'm a congressman, life's easy. This guy's off having steaks. Bull on me. Right? I got a daughter. She's got to deal with that crap on the TV every day. right? So it's tough. Anyone that thinks, no one out there's got some easy life, right? And you got it harder. I'm not dismissing that, right? You got some fears, real anxiety coming up with a job and whatever. And what you got to find is a support system.
Right. So instead of any help from the government, I'm here to tell you, you need to find a support system.
Are we sure that's not plagiarized from Tony Robbins?
That is just amazing. I just want to stop by, say hello, tell you I'm going to steal some cachet from you to show that I care, and that's it. As far as my care goes, it's just like, you need some help, bud. Trust me on this. You need some help.
How do you think my daughter feels when her black friends ask her why I'm suppressing votes?
I'm joking. My daughter isn't any black friends.
Yeah, the implication being, we've all got it tough, buddy. So just, buck up.
And the phrase "nobody has an easy life" is interesting in the time of our Gilded Age.
I was going to say, this is like, people have imitated Trump on the campaign trail, but this is like a very subtle sort of take on it. Like, yeah, I've got it real rough. The way that Trump's,
doing deals is a burden.
I don't even have to do this. So what do you do if you're Dave Brat and you're running? You don't seem to have any political skills that translate to normal people, right? Like, I mean, if you're going and you're talking to someone who's suffering from opioid addiction and probably all the fallout that entails, and maybe all of the circumstances that happened into that moment. And you tell them, like, everybody's life is hard. For me, it's hard for my kid to see the attack ads against me, and I'm not having steak every night. And maybe you got to find a job and whatnot. Well, what do you do? If you've got nothing to offer except for support groups, you've got to try and demonize your opponent. And what is the way that Republicans demonize a person running for Congress? Well, it's, of course, you call them, you say they're Nancy Pelosi clones, because it reminds people that, hey, this woman is a woman, and that's bad. And comes from a place where there's a lot of gay people, and that's bad.
California.
Right. And that's what's behind this smear. So here is Dave Brat trying to call repeatedly calling his opponent. Her name is Abigail Spanberger. And this is, and she has a pretty good response. I don't know what's going to happen in this election, but Dave Brat seems to be outmatched.
Nancy Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, the Nancy Pelosi liberal agenda. And if you look at blue states, can I finish the question? If you vote for Abigail Spanberger, the result will be Nancy Pelosi liberal policies across the board on every single issue.
I question again whether Congressman Brat knows which Democrat, in fact, he's running against. I am not Nancy Pelosi, and I am not President Barack Obama. I am a woman who grew up in Henrico County, who grew up in this community, who was taught service, hard work, and a commitment to the belief that the American people can be anything, and we will lead the way in this world. It is absolutely hypocritical that we would have someone stand on stage, talk about fiscal responsibility after adding $1.9 trillion to the deficit, after voting against hurricane relief, after voting against the omnibus bill, after voting against budget after budget because he didn't want to add to the deficit. However, when it came time to give $42 billion in tax breaks to pharmaceutical companies, there he was. I want to serve this community. It's the community that made me who I am, and I ask for your vote on November the 6th. Abigail Spanberger is my name.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, unless they had that debate in like a Democratic party headquarters, which I don't think they did, it didn't go so well for Dave Brat.
538 has it as a toss-up as well.
Yeah,
right,
I think he could be in some trouble.
I mean,
there.
His name's Dave Brat.
It did.
What more do we need, folks?
Tell it to.
That's the next
Eric,
ad, actually.
Well, canter sounds like he's got it sounds like it's close to canker, like canker sore. So
that's true.
This is how I predict politics.
I'll tell you a word who won. I mean, his people are always going to say that he won, and her people are always going to say that she won.
What's that in the debate?
Yeah.
In that exchange.
These people are deranged.
Well, yeah. I mean, but at the end of the day, somebody else is going to be watching. It's not just. There's got to be some people who haven't made their mind up yet or haven't decided to vote, and that could be it. All right, let's go to the phone, and then we'll talk about that. Calling from a 717 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? I'm having problems with the computer.
It's Danny from PA. If you'll give me 1 second, I was in the store. I was calling to give an update about the window to justice bill that I called in the other day about. Because there are some huge updates, and it's all bad news. Just as a brief recap, the bill would remove the statute of limitations for any future cases of child sex abuse and for existing victims or for people that were victims of child sex abuse in the past. They would have a 2-year window in order to pursue criminal charges, because as Pennsylvania law is now, victims of child sex assault have to file a civil lawsuit by 30 and then pursue criminal charges by the time they're 50, which presents a huge problem because the average age for people to even come out about sexual assault as a child is 52 in Pennsylvania. So the first update, this happened, I want to say Wednesday, is that the state Republicans added a provision to the bill that would prevent any institution from being sued at all, that being the Catholic Church, which is ridiculous because when you're talking about these cases, let's say you're in your 50s or 60s
of
now.
Course. But Danny, let me ask you this. What is, like, when they say we want to give these institutions, whatever they are, immunity, and it's not like the Catholic Church doesn't have a lot of money, but when they say they want to protect these institutions, what is the argument that they make? When they say they want to, have these sort of like hinky things with the statute of limitations, what is the argument they make? That's what
I was trying to figure that out, but that gets to the other thing where it's like, we didn't know exactly which groups were lobbying at the time, but now we do. It's specifically the, let me just check quickly, the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference and the Insurance Federation of Pennsylvania are the two groups that were lobbying against this bill very heavily to get this provision in. As for the argument that they're producing, there is none. I've been reading all the local news trying to find any sort of statement from any of these senators about the bill and why they're against it. And when I asked senators there at the protest, none of them said anything. They would just say hi and give a fake smile and then move on. They had nothing. Because there is no argument against this, unless they want to just do the whole, well, if we remove the statute of limitations, then just imagine all of the, people coming forward about sexual assault to seek justice. But
it's insane.
At any rate, and then the bill failed, too. It didn't receive enough votes to pass. Because with that provision in, it became such a toxic mess that if it did pass, if your assailant is dead already, you couldn't be able to take action against, the institution that covered it up and provided protection for the various predators in their ranks. So the bill is dead, and it can't be brought back up again until next year or so.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate your telling us about it, I mean, hopefully there'll be some type of fallout.
I hope. If you're in the Pennsylvania Democrats, the DSA, might be a good idea to primary the hell out of all the Republicans here, because they're all scared shitless if this could ever become a campaign issue. They said as much there.
What do you mean by
So
primary
make
them?
it one.
What do you mean by primary them?
Did I say primary? I just meant beat the campaign against them, beat them in a general election.
Yeah, it's a pretty
that's my
crazy.
bad.
Like, is there not any attention at all to this issue? I mean, it sounds like an issue. You'd imagine there'd be a lot more.
You'd think. A lot of local news outlets like Penn Live and then the various local ABC channels have been giving coverage to it, but I haven't seen anything nationally from CNN, MSNBC, or any national news outlet. Let me just say, hey, there was a bill going to prosecute to allow for the prosecution of child sex predators, and the Republicans trashed the bill. You'd think that that'd be something that more people would mention.
Yeah, you'd think.
Yeah, who are they protecting?
But
well, you just said the church and the insurance companies who would have to pay it out. I appreciate the call, Danny.
All right. Have a
Right.
good day.
Horrible. Calling from a 605 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This me?
I think it is. Who's this?
This is Malik in Minnesota. And I was calling. I just wanted to say thanks for that conversation at the end of the show yesterday about Trump voters and their motivations.
Yeah.
But I also, Jamie had a little bit of pushback just because I think that conversation was a sort of prime example of why the Bernie left really struggles in minority communities. And you have to be willing to accept what all the data says, which is that this is about, race and culture and less about the economics. And Mehdi Hassan made a great point. I can't remember if it was your show or on Hayes, about how low-income minority voters were not drawn in by Trump or, that sort of economic message. And that's, more proof that this has more to do with race than economics. And if the Bernie left and our left doesn't figure that out, then we're going to have a Biden in 2020. So I think it's really important that we accept that and move forward.
I never said it's not about race or racism, right? I just think it's not only about racism.
Minimizing.
I don't mean to minimize it. It's clearly a very important factor. But also, I would argue that the economic base plays a role in where racism and even the concept of race comes from. So I think part of the reason we might be talking past each other is I'm not really that concerned with the psychology of individual voters. I'm looking at it more as a systemic process,
But I think,
all
right, Malik.
Can I just point out? Can I just point out one thing? In Scandinavia, in there, I forget exactly which Scandinavian country it is, but it's one that obviously is socialist and has a higher standard of living than we do. And even there is an uprising among the far right pushing back against immigrants. So the idea that if you just raise the standard of living and if you just raise economic well-being, that will take care of this, it just doesn't hold water.
That's not the argument that I'm making.
That's really important.
Well,
but I will listen and I appreciate it.
I mean, here's the problem, is I think, and to the extent that you guys are talking past each other, I think here's the problem, is that one of these things is the determinant. There's no doubt in my mind that there are a myriad of elements that go into racism, in terms of what drives it. Your dad was racist, your mom was racist, or maybe you got beat up by somebody of a different race, or economic pressures or whatnot.
And what activates
let me
it in
finish.
the moment.
Let me finish 1 sec. And what activates it in the moment may be different. But the data in the study I was presenting showed that if you control for what was going on economically, your things of race determined who you were going to vote for. And so when there is this pushback, I think people who are subjected to racism, whether it's good economic times or bad economic times, say, hey, this person doesn't get it. And so unless there's a better argument, which isn't there, then this is the message that's being sent. This is the message being sent. And I think like Bernie, I think has maybe gotten wiser about this. But if there is I hear you about racism, but ... or I hear you about racism and ... then it starts becoming really problematic, I think.
Well, I'm not a strategist for Bernie Sanders, right? My message, I don't work for him. My message is not his. I support him.
Well, you're a strategist for you. And I'm saying like, and to promote that notion. And so whatever the response is to a study that says racism was the determinant factor, maybe it's 51%, maybe it's 55%, but racism's the determinant factor here. To push back on that, there needs to be something more substantial rather than racism comes from economic situations. Because I think people who have been subjected to racism know that's not the case. That if economic anxiety can hit everybody across the spectrum, regardless of the context in which they're living in, and it just appears without any way to measure its existence, but just it's deigned that it lives in that person, then it doesn't mean anything. Then there's never a time when people don't have economic anxiety. I mean, so that's what's problematic about that pushback.
Well, you're still talking about the psychology of individual voters, though, and I'm really not.
Well,
I'm
then
not arguing
you
with
don't
you.
have anything to do with that conversation as to why voters went from Obama to Trump, because you want it to be something else, and all the data says it's something else. Like you want it to be one thing, and the data says it's another thing, and so it's quite possible that those people voted because of their psychological reasons, that they don't like black people, that they don't like immigrants. It was one thing to give a break to the clean cut Negro, but I'm not going to have somebody come in and give stuff to other people. And the interesting thing I also was reading about is that, Barack Obama probably talked about race a lot less than Hillary Clinton. Right? Never mind what Donald Trump was doing. Barack Obama stayed far away from race as he possibly could. And the idea of racial justice. And that was what I think, made him a little bit more palatable. And so it's fine if you're not interested in a psychological explanation, and racism constitutes psychology. But that mass psychology ends up being institutionalized, and it appears caused a lot of individuals who voted for Obama to vote for Trump.
Well, here's two things. First of all, I think Bernie's popularity among people of color is greatly underestimated by a lot of folks right now.
He lost the South by over 1 million votes.
I mean, we've got polls saying that he is the most popular politician in the U.S. currently, and people of color like him more than white people do.
I I'm a person
He
of
also
color, and I
won
like
the
him, but
millennial.
Nonetheless, he has a problem there.
He won the vote of young people of color, which is something.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, but
And Democratic primaries might not be an accurate representation of all people of color
all
in
right,
America.
but we're changing
two
the
things.
topic now.
Two things. Question: Why do you think that people have gotten more racist since 2008 or 2012?
Are you asking me? Definitively. I mean, I don't know how you would define more
Do you
racist.
have evidence for that?
Hate crimes gone up.
Like
people are getting more violent in the name of race.
I just think
the number of white
under
supremacist
Obama
groups
too,
are up. I mean, I think those are three pretty substantial ways of articulating it.
I just think the level.
The president of the United States is actively promoting racist memes.
Well, that's how it's expressing itself. But the raw materials, right? The sentiment.
Well, okay.
In
I don't know
people,
if there's more racism.
I don't think.
But I think that voting for a guy who is going to, attack black people and brown people, maybe that doesn't mean I'm more racist, but I'm willing to take that step of like checking off and letting that guy do it. So I don't know what the word more racist means.
Well, here's the thing. I do not believe that the level of racism in our country or the world, because this is a worldwide phenomenon, right? I don't believe that it has changed substantially in the past decade or so. We have always been a racist country. We are still a racist country. The thing that has changed is that global capitalism is in crisis.
Well,
and the way it expresses itself.
Can I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
One thing. I am a black mixed race person with half my family being white and half my family being black. And I will absolutely tell you that since November of since early in 2015, that has absolutely changed. Okay? And you may not experience it, but I am telling you that it is wholly different now than it was 2.5 years ago. And
but why?
It's different. It's absolutely different.
Why is it different?
Because you have a president who
I don't go home for holidays, I'll tell you that.
Who is validating this. Economically, every single economic measure is better than it was 2 years ago. Every single one. Point to one that is worse.
I mean, maybe you and I are looking at different stuff, but the falling
tell me
rate
what
of
you're
profit,
looking at. Tell me what you're looking at.
capitalism is in a state of crisis.
The people in this country don't give a shit about other countries.
Including America.
All right, Jamie, tell me what data you're looking at that suggests that we are in worse economic situation, materially worse economic situation today than we were 2 years ago.
I mean, I don't have it at my fingertips. I'll admit I'm not an economist. I listen to Marxist economists.
I'm not.
Maybe
I'm
I'm
asking you. I'm just saying that you're making an assessment. You're making an assertion that the reason why racism is greater today than it was in 2016 or in 2015. I mean, when Malik says that racism is worse, and you want to say it's because there's more economic anxiety, there is.
That's not what I'm saying.
What is it?
I'm going to start over. I do not mean to dismiss anyone's experience of racism. That is real. We live in a very racist country. We always have. I don't know when it's going to get better. And there probably was a bit of a feedback loop from Trump. But which came first? Which came first? Right populism or Trump? Racism or Trump? I think it's really... It's complicated and maybe I need to start over. I don't know. But we are in a state of crisis. The Scandinavian countries too, where people still have the remnants of a welfare state. It's not a direct one-to-one comparison. I'm not saying people feel I'm economically anxious, therefore I'm going to get more racist. Although I think that has played a part at points in history. I'm just saying it's more complicated than just racism. And when you see a rise in racism, you want to look at what other factors are happening.
I would add one thing is I think the difference is racism's proximity to power. I think that's the main thing that's changed.
Yeah, yes,
especially in the last 2 years.
Which is getting a license to make it, to act upon it in the public sphere, right? Like racism is fought fundamentally by making it just essentially toxic within your social environment. And
why is it happening all over the world right now?
Why is it happening all over the world?
Why is right-wing populism a thing all over the world?
Well, I think there's a myriad of reasons. I mean, the millions of refugees that have had to come in from the Middle East could have something to do with that. In some instances, maybe it could be economic anxiety, but there is no data in this country. The economic anxiety that people may have in Hungary is in no way impacting people in this country. I am 100% sure of that. And so, like, right in front of you, there are some very obvious things. We have a president who launched his campaign by saying Mexicans are rapists, okay? And we have people telling you, and all the data shows that, I don't know what more racism means. I don't know if that means that there's more racists or people have more racist beliefs in their thought, but we do know there have been people acting out of racism more in the public sphere. They've been organizing, they've been starting groups, they've been painting things, they've been creating memes. I mean, all of that is true and indisputable. And so we have no similar data on economic deprivation. We don't. We simply do not. There's been no greater economic deprivation today than there was 3 years ago. Maybe in specific individuals, but that's it. And so we have those two things. And that's not to say that it's 100% about race, but in terms of what is determinant, you're arguing against data and studies and what is obvious to people. And outside of like, you need to bring something more to it than theory.
Well, I realize that, and I'm not trying to make a one-to-one connection between economic anxiety people are consciously feeling and racism. I'm trying to look at the bigger picture, and clearly I haven't framed it in a way that is very clear. So I'm going to work on it and get back to you, because I really think this is an important thing to understand. Liberalism, liberal democracy is collapsing in on itself. People no longer have faith in it. And there's a rising tide of nebulous populism that is being expressed in a bunch of different ways.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think that, like, you know, I think in terms of how to ultimately fix things, that perspective, I think, is correct. Like, you have to address that. But what Malik is talking about is in terms of like a vehicle to doing that, in terms of elections, and in terms of being able to have a message. Like, let's put it this way. It's not enough for people to run against Donald Trump, right? You need to come in and offer them something material benefits. Even if Donald Trump is the least popular politician in the country. The flip side of that is, even if Bernie is the most popular politician in the country, and even if he is the most popular politician in the context of the Democratic primary, he needs to get to 51%, and in the context of the primary, broadly speaking, and there has to be an understanding from people who, and in my estimation, who perceive that the heart and the overall problem with our society is fundamentally economic. Even if they have that analysis, they have to speak to the material interests of minorities. And there is a tendency, and I feel like this is an example of it, there's a tendency to shy away from doing that, because there is a sense that we need to maintain the narrative that the fundamental problem with all of this is economic. And even if I have some agreement with that, it is denying the material wants of a large segment of the population. Now, it may be the case that Bernie Sanders is the most popular with African Americans right now when you poll. I don't know, but I haven't looked at it. But even if I stipulate that, he's not going to get, it's not, I'm quite convinced it's not 51%. He's not beating the entire field. And so it was a liability for him in the last election. A lot of that had to do with, I think, building relationships with leaders in that community. But at the end of the day, like, it's not going to help to address these material things about racism if there is an and or but. If there is a lack of understanding as to just even what moved those Obama to Trump voters. And
I mean, I don't disagree with much of what you're saying. I guess I don't even think that the problem is economics necessarily. I think that the problem is capitalism, and it created and supercharged race and racism as we know it in America, as well as gender, by the way, because these people are also horrible misogynists, right?
When do you say capitalism started?
Oh my God, is this a test?
No, I'm just saying, like, I don't buy the, like, when people say it invented racism.
I want to jump off the line and leave
yeah,
it for
sorry,
everybody, but proud to be a Cedar Reese to appreciate the exchange of ideas.
All right, well, thanks for the call.
I think about that.
I think it definitely monetized racism, but I think, like, if you look back at the 1600s,
racialized slavery did not exist before capitalism and the U.S. slave trade. Or not the, now I'm nervous.
Well, I mean, because, like, it just depends, because, like, I mean, Hobsbawm's capitalism starts in, like, after the French Revolution, right? But there's clearly, like, the Pequot Indians were killed because, I mean, and there's primitive accumulation stuff there, but I don't buy the fact that the racism was invented by capitalism.
No, racism as we know it. Like, race combined with a system of economic domination. Racialized slavery was original to this landmass right here.
Yeah,
it did not exist before that. There was slavery before that, and there was, like, certainly bias against other kinds of people, but that particular thing didn't exist.
Right, but I see that more as a colonial thing than a capitalistic thing. At least that's how I view it. So that's why I'm just saying, like, I think you can talk about the relationship between racism and capitalism without falling into the thing that capitalism is the precedent always.
Oh, there can be colonialism under other systems.
Right. And that's why I think it's like, I think you can't reduce it to capitalism.
But there can't be colonialism and socialism.
Right, but that's changing what he's arguing. But all right, look, let me just say right now.
Read Adolf Reed on Marx, race, and neoliberalism. He says it much better than I could in the time that I have right now.
He's overdue to come on the show again. But let me just say this right now at 12:36. We're going to have to end the show earlier than we're going to want to at one point. So I just heads up because Brendan and I have to catch a flight. So we got about a little bit less than 20 minutes left.
And capitalism and colonialism arose together, by the way. I think, oh my God, mercantilism, right? Mercantilism, people. I'm going to put together some facts. And
wasn't Rome pretty big on colonialism on some level, or no? Is that just, I mean...
Well, yeah, the citizenship thing where every place is covered. I mean, that's why I have issue with blaming everything on capitalism, because oligarchy existed before capitalism. Like,
well, feudalism was a horrible oppressive system,
right?
But they didn't have, like, I'm talking about race as we know it and as people experience it in the U.S. right now.
You mean, okay?
All right, let's. Oh, this is pretty funny. It has nothing to do with race, and nothing to do with capitalism. Maybe it does a little bit. Folks, you remember, what's this guy's name now again?
Jason Miller.
Jason Miller, of course. Jason Miller, not to be confused with John Miller, the alias that Donald Trump would use when he would call media people back in the day. Jason Miller was a former senior campaign aide to Donald Trump. He had to leave after he had an affair with another former aide to Donald Trump, and they had a child out of wedlock. And Jason Miller, of course, was married to someone else. And I don't even know if Jason Miller and that woman talked. They had a very rocky end. I think that was public. I'm not going to say her name. It's not important to this story because apparently Jason Miller was super busy at that time. Because if you're going to have one lady on the side, why wouldn't you have two? And so according to court documents, or I should say, according to reporting by Caitlin Kruger, right? Is that who it was?
Yes.
And she works at
Splinter.
At Splinter. There was a story that she wrote that Jason Miller had impregnated a woman, it had an affair with a woman, and the woman got pregnant, and the woman, he was afraid that she was going to carry the baby to term, so he made a smoothie that included the day after pill, and she made these charges after obviously having an acute situation that would follow a taking the day after pill. And so this guy, Jason Miller, decided to sue this woman, Caitlin Kruger, at Splinter News. You had, here it is, ex-CNN pundit Jason Miller files a $100 million lawsuit over the abortion pill story. Now, it's very hard to know what the story is here. Maybe the reporter got it wrong. Maybe the reporter didn't get it wrong. And Jason Miller knows that if we put enough money behind a lawsuit, we can win because the other side can't necessarily defend it. So it turns out that Caitlin Kruger has a boyfriend. And this boyfriend is a guy named Will Menaker, who, of course, we've had on this program a couple of times. He is one of the hosts of Chapo Trap House, which apparently engage in name-calling. And so Will Menaker took to Twitter to say, to call Jason Miller a rat-faced baby killer and Trump PR homunculus, and says he's suing my girlfriend for $100 million. Cool! Exclamation point. And so now it appears, according to court documents reviewed by the Daily Beast, that Miller and his legal team have added Will Menaker to the $100 million defamation lawsuit against Splinter News and Gizmodo Media Group. And the amended suit filed on Thursday cites that tweet that rat-faced baby killer and Trump PR homunculus Jason Miller is suing my girlfriend for $100 million. Cool. Miller is seeking unspecified damages for what the suit calls Menaker's misconduct. Now,
that should be a spin-off show.
First off, I'm not an attorney, but Jason Miller is clearly a public figure, right? I mean, he was out there. He was on national TV multiple times during the campaign. That alone makes you a public figure. So the defamation laws are that you need to knowingly report out or to make accusations without anything backing up. Now, it seems to me that Will Menaker is simply reporting what another reporter has written. Now, I guess he's saying, you know, he's made up the part about rat face, but that's an opinion. And let's be honest. I mean, if I was going to describe,
it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not necessarily a bad
to
thing.
have a rat face.
It's not, particularly if your face looks like a rat. And baby killer is simply, I guess the argument is that he killed a fetus. It was reported that he killed a fetus.
I didn't realize Will Menaker was pro-life.
Will Menaker's like trying
don't
to
sue me, Will Menaker.
push some type of. But what's the theory behind this? Like, what is the theory here that Will why would you sue Will Menaker?
So one detail that I think we might have overlooked is that Miller is being represented by the same attorneys that sued Gizmodo Media and took down Gawker with the Terry Boella or Hulk Hogan lawsuit.
Surprise.
So those guys were funded by Peter Thiel as well. So this could be an attempt to finally take down every aspect of Gizmodo. And now they find maybe an opportunity to throw Chapo.
But I don't understand what the theory is.
The theory is, I'm looking at
that you can attach Will Menaker to this suit. I mean, it's one thing to go after Splinter Media, but this is just a guy. You can say like there's no transitive property where you can sue somebody because he's a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Like you've gone on dates, so you're part of this.
Well, the theory is apparently Miller is accusing Kruger and Yashar Ali of being in cahoots with AJ Delgado, who Miller is. I guess blaming, or who's
AJ Delgado was the first woman, right, that he had an affair with.
Right, and so apparently this is all a cabal of people trying to smear Jason Miller. Which I mean, you can see why they'd be in a hurry to do that. The guy with his importance and prestige.
Right. We've got to go after Miller, and how are we going to do this? I know.
And all they did was
get the Chapo guys. This is the way we'll take down Miller. First off, we're going to get someone who does a far left wing podcast, who has a tremendous amount of credibility.
Menaker is an asset we've been cultivating for a long time, and we found the perfect person to set him up on.
There we go. And who else are they going to bring in on this? What,
Yashar Ali, who doesn't, I don't like his politics personally. I've seen.
Well, that's what makes it even more perfect.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We're going to surround him with different politics, and we're going to take out Jason Miller.
Plenty of cover.
It's funny because that's what they're doing.
Who's it?
It's all projection
from
the Peter Thiel side.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, and the Project Veritas thing, right? Like, we're going to float a fake story, or some fake story is going to be floated, and we're going to get our people in the media to run with it. And by the time
they're doing a rat F, which is interesting. I wonder if
it's a rat face F.
Rat face F.
F stands for face.
Maybe what we can do is get Miller to grow a goatee. Therefore, it'll be more difficult to say that he has a rat face. Does that make it more difficult or less difficult?
Gonna rat fuck the rat face. Initiate.
Somebody go get Jason Miller's tail trimmed so that when they call him rat face, it'll be clearly an act of defamation.
I like the idea, though, that if we're going to, operate or, activate Agent Menaker and Kruger,
we're going to do it on Miller.
We're going to do it on Miller.
Right. Miller is the key to the entire.
I think maybe Pompeo
Right. Miller's the key to the entire operation. If you could take Miller out. What is Miller doing these days? Is he still is he on CNN?
I believe he stepped down from CNN, but I believe he's still on the Keep America Great re-election campaign.
And just to clarify, all Splinter did was report on allegations made in the lawsuit.
They reported on allegations in a lawsuit. Perfect. We've got them right exactly where we want them. That is pretty impressive. Apparently, somebody just stepped up and said, we'll pay to just do this lawsuit. You're never going to see $1. This is going to tie them up and be a pain in the ass.
That's so bad.
It's total. This is a slap suit, right? This is a slap suit.
Ugh. I mean, this goes without saying, but the fact that individual billionaires have the power to single-handedly execute any publication that they don't like because they made fun of them or whatever, not great for democracy.
Yeah, that's
a little problematic.
That's the threat to free speech right now.
I wonder if there is actually a mechanism to deal with this.
It's
I mean,
called
I think it's
revolution.
Well, if short of revolution, there is a mechanism to deal with this, because I think like
the First Amendment would have seemed to have been sufficient.
Well, but clearly they're not going to win this lawsuit. If it was just that Splinter News was just simply reporting on a court filing, and that was in the Delgado custody battle, and apparently the filing was sealed. So
that would be on Delgado, though, wouldn't it?
Well, no, it's not defamation. She may have broken, she may be in contempt of court if you release something that is sealed.
Right.
That's a different issue. But in terms of defamation, just because it's sealed, it doesn't implicate the reporter. If you get a leak, you can write it. I mean, even if it's a top secret
Pentagon
thing about
papers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, it's possible if the reporter did not the reporter had to trust somebody, either that they were getting the right documents or that, they weren't being lied to. But even then, the defamation laws for a public figure are much tougher. And this lawsuit is completely nuts.
A.G. Delgado was saying that she says, I'm just amused that their entire lawsuit seems to rest on reporter couldn't report on what was in a court filing that was sealed. And in parentheses, she says, hey, morons, it was never sealed and isn't sealed. And here, look at this nameless, faceless affidavit from an unidentified person denying this. Yeah, I don't quite follow that.
But what is going on here is completely a lawsuit to intimidate. And so there are SLAPP laws, but maybe this is filed in a place where there's not a jurisdiction for that, or they don't think that they're going to make some money. But there should be a countersuit here, because it will probably be thrown out very quickly.
It's in Florida. Get a Papantonio on it.
Well, yeah, I know he doesn't do those. That's small bore, buddy.
Here's the other thing.
That's total small bore.
Like, there were people who gleefully watched Gawker go down and had no sympathy for them because it wasn't a very sympathetic scenario to a lot of people, right? They published someone's sex tape without their consent. But the First Amendment isn't just for people that you like and things that you like. And I thought it was kind of a shitty move of Gawker, but I understood the broader implications and that this is a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a real problem. All right, let's take a couple. Let's just do this. Is Tom Friedman really?
Can this be the last time? I wish they.
All right, look, Tom Friedman. This guy, he just can't let go. He just can't let go. Tom Friedman's inability to say, I was wrong is wow.
What's the coat he's wearing?
I was just gonna say, wait
cool
a second.
Coat, guy.
This is his Fonzie. This is his Fonzie move. All right, so Tom Friedman, as you know, wrote glowingly about MBS. And contemporaneously with his writing about that, he got a lot of grief from people at the time.
Yeah.
Like, hey, dude, maybe you're going a little bit overboard. And he was like, I don't care.
Like, a million people said, let's put this one in the time capsule and see how it ages.
I don't care. I see somebody who's trying to do something in the Arab world, and I'm going to support them. And I say, F that. So, all right, that was contemporaneous. It wasn't maybe completely obvious that he was getting completely snowed by a guy as a horrible human being who would go on to basically bring Yemen to the brink of genocide. Still time. Could be full genocide. As well as ordering the dismemberment of a journalist who criticized him. So, Thomas Friedman, come back on to CNN. Let's have you say you were wrong, and then we'll be gone with it.
I was quite skeptical, but here were the 5 things I saw on that trip that I had never seen before.
Pause it. Let me tell you something about 5 things, okay? When I got fired from Air America for the last time, a charlatan who stole, I don't want to say stole, a charlatan who who, in my estimation, in my opinion, bilked the company out of a lot of money by telling the owner who came in, who didn't know what he was doing, that you got to spend money to make money. And one of the things he did is he got rid of Randy Rhodes, and he brought in Montel Williams, and he really just junked up the place pretty bad. And he said, "Yeah, this is my fault. The economy went really bad." And I said, "Well, but you didn't just lose ad revenue. You lost market share. It's one thing, we've maintained market share, but the value of the market is just less." And the thing he said to me, he goes, there were 5 decisions. He did exactly that same. There were 5 decisions that were made before I got here. I think that's like, they teach you that in management school. Like, you got to have 5.
It's terrifying.
Because you have 3, it feels like you can't come up with a full hand.
Yeah.
But if you do 6, that looks too ugly. You just go 5. And let's hear what those 5 things were that he now saw at that time.
Before, in Saudi Arabia, I saw someone, a Saudi ruler, ready to remove the religious police off the streets. A huge deal for Saudis. Second, I saw him giving women the right to drive. Third, we saw him opening the country to cinema, Western concerts, and sporting events. Fourth, I saw him actually taking on the hardline clerics in the war of ideas, saying, no, you don't have the right interpretation of Islam. I have the right interpretation. No Sunni, no Saudi leader had done that before. And Christian, most importantly, what I saw were young Saudis who were coming back to Saudi Arabia because they thought a real change was happening. In my column, I said Arab Spring from the top down, not the bottom up. And that's what I saw. And now some people said, you know what, Tom, it's all a fake because look what he's doing in Yemen. Look what he's, people that he's arresting here. And my attitude was, maybe there's clearly a downside here. There's clearly an upside. And I thought it was worth investing a little hope in the upside if we could curb the downside. And so I basically spent the next 9 months writing columns saying, kid's got a big upside, but a big downside. Would be nice if we had a U.S. ambassador
like the baseball
here. Would be nice if Trump actually talked to this kid about curbing the downside. Why don't we appoint someone like Secretary of State Baker to come here to be your envoy?
All right, now I just want to clarify something. This is exactly also what he said about the Iraq War, incidentally. Like, I thought they were there for democracy, and it turns out they weren't. And that was the problem. It was not my fault. It was not my assessment that was wrong. It was their behavior after the fact. So he's got some upside, having concerts, letting women drive. Some downside, creating genocide in a country. Here's the problem with his calculation. Like, he can't seem to sort of weigh out what might be a little bit, like, every piece of evidence is exactly the same to him, right? Right? Every piece of evidence has exactly the same weight. There's no, like, hey, he's willing to kill an entire country for what basically seems like no reason. But he's also willing to have concerts. So,
you had 5 things on one side, and you had the genocide and what else in Saudi Arabia? So that's 5 versus 2. So
boom. I mean, that explains it. I think everybody knows 5 bigger than 2. Because there were, like, I had 5 reasons to come for it, and they just had 2.
I would split off like shopping malls and movie theaters into 2 different reasons, actually.
But that wouldn't work.
Sometimes the shopping malls have the movie theaters in them.
You got to have 5. You can't do 6. And you can't do 2. You gotta have 5.
It's a shame there's only 2 things that you could find fault with Saudi Arabia.
Yemen was one of the things he thought was good, right? That was one of the 5.
Callers, I'm sorry. We don't have any time. I'm going to do 5 IMs and then get out of here. But before we do, ladies and gentlemen, in the studio right now, we have someone who's been going out hobnobbing with some of the haute political figures of our time. There's a little blurry, but last night, Jamie.
These socialist cameras.
Out partying with AOC.
Oh, you mean Alexandria?
That's right. Oh, you call her Alexandria now? That's
We're friends.
Did you just call her A?
No.
No, she doesn't like that. What were you guys doing? Were you guys like rum chugging competition, or what goes on at these events?
Yeah, maybe some Jello shots with like a little hammer and sickle drawn on top of them and frosting.
And did you guys? What did you guys do? Pay for your drinks? How does that work? Who took this picture? What did they use it with? How did they take that picture? Was it an iPhone?
Was it a capitalist camera?
Right? Yeah. Right.
Actually, David Cleon took that picture with the show
with an iPhone.
I believe so. Yeah.
All right.
How in cahoots the liberal media is.
Unbelievable. The cabal exposed.
What was the event?
Oh, it was at Sean McKelwey's Blue and Gold Happy Hour.
There you go.
It's at the bar Blue and Gold. It's like a leftist political happy hour. Yeah, it was cool to meet her. We talked about DSA's various projects. She just did a town hall with DSA members in Queens the night before that, and I heard it went pretty well. We talked about Decrim NY, which is a sex workers' rights organization that's just formed that I'm a part of, and she met with them the other day. And basically just like how people like her and people like me are going to team up and use our inside-outside strategy to undermine the system, abolish the value form, and basically turn America into Venezuela.
It's all coded.
All coded. Totally coded.
I'm not even going to tell you what part of that is true.
There you go, folks. You're going to have to wait and find out.
Get those white guys. Get them. Get them.
That's audio from their actual conversation. I don't know why you guys sound like Bill O'Reilly.
That's weird.
I'm a bit sick.
All right, folks, we'll do 10 IMs and I got to get out of here. Jez Garlay, seriously, I want to know if you're doing another live show and documentary on it. Seriously, hoping to, but we're not sure. Wiesman, are there any known details of Politicon live stream so we can get the onslaught that's going to take place this weekend? Left is best. I've heard that the socialist, non-socialist panel will be on C-SPAN. We'll see.
Revolution will be televised.
Contagious Chameleon. Sam, the Jamal Khashoggi disappearance is very credible, but it wasn't Saudi Arabia. It was somebody who looked like Saudi Arabia, a doppelganger, if you will. Jonathan Armstead, Sam, I woke up early this morning and caught Chuck Schumer on Morning Joe. I turned on the volume mainly to see how closely your and Michael's impersonation of him was. It was spot on. Mainly see how Michael's impersonation was spot on. But that's not my point. Schumer started for the first 60 seconds by saying that he hates your Boston Red Sox, the Dodgers, and doesn't know who he'll root for in the World Series, even though the Brewers have a shot at getting in. He went as far as comparing the Dodgers to Stalin and Hitler. No joke. I wish he showed this much passion when the visiting team was Trump's judicial nominees. Raman Saint, is there any scumbag more deserving of the hellfire fearmongers than Pat Robertson? He said we can't afford to risk a $100 billion arms deal of something as trivial as human life. Did we have that video? That Pat Robertson? Should have played that. It's horrible. Colin from Nebraska. Yo, Richard Wolf put out a video destroying Daddy Lobster Cryberry Peterson 2 days ago. Worth a watch. I did watch it. I thought it was pretty good. David Letterman voice. And the number one reason I'm eagerly anticipating the midterm elections is DJ Danarchy's inevitable drops in the blue wave. Josh from Chicago. Can Sam wish my friend Ryan congratulations on his impending marriage? Ryan, congratulations. Congrats. Enjoy your marriage. Wanted a Gorka voice. Sam's Tinder profile, girl swipe right. I tell you everything you need to know about mass class action lawsuits. Left is amount of go. What's up, MR Crew? Hey Sam, I wanted to drive you to drive hard, hit your killer crossover, and use your right side fadeaway to score points on Charlie Kirk. I think Jank and the Effer Swallowson debate is going to be a effing disaster. Give him hell. New Human, the ticket price for Politicon seems pretty high. Do you have think it's normal or possibly way of controlling the audience that gets in? I don't doubt it. Mitch from Houston, have you heard the radio ad for French Hill in Arkansas? It's absurd. Oh, well, I guess we'll have to play that on Monday. Nuclear Negroid, Republicans are going to soothe voters with healthcare lies and feckless Dems with the support of media, and it's so goddamn frustrating. Establishment, dear Bets, is it possible to provide all those great snippets for download? I don't get that. DX Full, hey, Proletary, I heard Stephanie Miller read a tweet by Mayday Mindy yesterday. Hope you'll run into Stephanie and her Facebook friend Kathy Griffin at Politicon tomorrow. I noticed the Politicon website lists you as part of the TYT gang, not part of the Ring of Fire contingent. Why is that? I have no idea. You're a 5-time podcaster winner. You answered to nobody, Peaches. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that's about. They wanted to. Almighty, I'm with Jamie on the whole economic anxiety racism thing. A study showed that the belief that Obama is a secret Muslim is a bigger predictor of Trump support than even Republican identification. Well, it's a well-known fact that anti-Muslim conspiracy theories are rooted in economic anxiety, not racism. And the second final, Matthias, you guys should look into the giant tax fraud scheme that is currently being employed to defraud European taxpayers. Has already been used to steal 55 billion euro. It has come X and come. Get your mind out of the gutter. Several big banks like Deutsche Bank had departments that were tasked with committing the fraud. Jeez.
What?
And the final IM of the day. This is a good one. Election day is November 6th. Not the 7th, Samantha. That's right. Michael will be here Monday with a pre-taped interview that I did. And see you Tuesday. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want. But I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive,